Hey guys, so today I want to talk about my Glacial Lance Ritualist for 0.5. I know a lot of you guys really enjoyed this build last league, and plenty of you guys came up to me earlier the previous weeks, asked me, hey, is Glacial Lance going to be viable in 0.5? And the answer to that is yes, it is going to be viable, and you can use it as a starter build as well. I went and made a starter version of it to kind of teach you guys how to level up with it. Spoilers, it's using twisters. But yeah, it is going to be viable for league start, and it is also going to be viable as a build this league. Nothing really changed too much about the build. The only thing that really did change was one, we now use disengage instead of the thunderstorm for shock, because unfortunately shock conduction is gone now, so we can't really use that to reliably shock enemies. And then also the other thing is ghost dance did get nerfed, so there is a little bit of iffiness there about like survivability. I'm hoping and assuming that it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be fine, but there is a chance that it does end up being a little bit squishy. And then if that does happen, then we'll fix it later. But yeah, that is kind of the big changes with the build. Now, for league start, right? The one thing I do have to say is that this build is, while it is league start viable because these uniques in general are not very expensive, I will say that if you're funding, like if you really just get super, super poor and you're not able to afford like a couple exalt item when you get in the end game, I don't know. It might not be the build for you to league start, but for the most part, it should be fine. And what you can do is you can just play twisters until you get to this setup, because I really don't think that this setup, like if you don't have this setup, right, where it's like Scold's Bridle, Lightning Coil, and Bijou-Born Belt with the two Valako's Roar, if you can't get that setup, I don't think it's that good to play. You should just play twisters until then. But I don't really want to yap too much about this build right now because my previous self was much better at explaining the build. So if you want to learn about the build in depth, I'm just going to go and put that part, like the old video here, just so it goes over all the details. But if you don't want to listen to it, or you've already listened to all that rambling about how the build works and why it's so good, I'm going to go and put a kind of like a timestamp for the mapping process of this character, just to show you guys how the character looks in maps with the new updates. So yeah, before I kind of do the outro into the rest of the video, of course, I think I'll be uploading this on the day of League launch. So hopefully you guys, this helps you guys decide if you want to play this build or not. And also I'll be streaming the entire day. So come hang out on my stream if you have any questions, and also come for the drops, right? So, you know, drops, cool free cosmetics, everything. Yeah, come hang out. All right, enjoy the rest of the video. Hey guys, so today I want to show off my Glacial Lance Ritualist. Now, Glacial Lance is an ability that I have been in love with since 0.2, and since then, Glacial Lance has unfortunately never been a great clearing ability, so I've been trying to find ways to solve that. In 0.2, there was the Voltaic Mark chaining, and they completely gutted and destroyed that, and that really crippled the build. Now, in 0.4, I have taken the approach of playing this as a Ritualist because this class allows you to do a really cool combination where you basically get infinite frenzy charges to empower your Glacial Lance. A lot of people have been playing Deadeye, but I feel like that's been a little bit too clunky because you kind of need to be really close to the enemies to make that work. Now, this build works off of one main driver. So that is going to be the unique helmet Scold's Bridle. This helmet makes it so that whenever you spend mana, you take that amount of damage or a portion of that damage in physical damage. So it hits you with physical damage every time you use a skill, basically. Now, when you get hit with that physical damage, we're going to use Lightning Coil to convert some of that physical damage into lightning damage. And then we have the Valako's Roar Charm, and we run two of these, which makes it so that every single time we get hit with lightning damage, we gain a frenzy charge. So that means every single time we use our Glacial Lance, we get a frenzy charge that then gets consumed by Glacial Lance. We also use the Bijou-Born Belt because this allows us to have a lower cooldown on these Valako's Roar charms because the duration itself is basically the cooldown. And that is the backbone of this build, and that's what makes this build work. And that probably answers the question of why Ritualist? Because Ritualist has an ascendancy node on their tree called Mine Phylacteries. This makes it so that you can instead consume 25% of your maximum mana to trigger charms with insufficient charges. Without Ritualist, you're probably running out of charms all the time, and as a result, you're going to be unable to generate frenzy charges. But with Ritualist's Ascendancy, you can generate frenzy charge no matter how many charm charges that you have, meaning that you can just infinitely generate charges. Now let's hop into the character itself. I'm a level 95 Ritualist, used sparingly. We're at 151 Strength, 163 Dexterity, 151 Intelligence, and we're rocking 2100 Life, 710 Energy Shield, and 277 Spirit. And we have 52% Evasion, and the armor doesn't really matter. Pretty, on the surface, squishy character, but it's actually not that squishy, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. We are at the, 75 fire resistance, 75 cold resistance, and 58 lightning resistance, and 41 chaos. Now, the reason why we are not capped on lightning res is because whenever we attack, we actually go to max lightning resistance due to our charms. So we don't actually need to be at max lightning resistance to be at max lightning resistance, because anytime where it matters, we're probably going to be attacking anyways. So that's why we have lightning at 58. Now, for this character, our gems are as follows. We are using, of course, Glacial Lance as our main attacking ability. We have Rakiata's Flow, Garukan's Resolve, Elemental Armament, Overextend, and Bater's Vengeance on here. Now, these lineage support gems, these two specifically, are very expensive, but you don't need them. Of course, this is going to increase our damage ceiling by quite a bit, but if you can't afford them, you can replace Rakiata's Flow with Ice Cold Pen, and then Garukan's, you can probably just use like Blind Side on here instead. That is going to be fine. You're going to be able to do all content with it. It won't matter. This is just going to be helping us with mostly single target, in my opinion, and doing single target faster. Now, for Bater's Vengeance, this is not very expensive, so feel free to use this. If you can't use this, then use like Ice Spider or something like that. And the last of our attacking abilities is going to be Barrage. We are using Perpetual Charge, Cooldown Recovery, Heightened Charges, Second Wind 3, and Prolonged Duration. I'll explain a little bit more about the Barrage setup later when we go over single target. Now, Herald of Ice, most of you guys already know this setup. It's mainly there for Herald Chaining. Armor Break 3, Armor Explosion, Uric Smelting, Magnified Area for a bigger AoE, and Pinpoint Critical so we can crit more because we are using a spear build, which in general, spears are a little bit, let's just say, lower critical hit chance compared to a lot of other weapons. But we do have gain as extra physical damage because we need this to be able to proc the Herald Chaining. So if you don't have this, you won't be able to chain Heralds. Please remember to get this on your weapon. Now, those are our only real damaging skills, really, not including Herald of Ice. The rest of them are going to be Spirit Gems. So, Charge Regulation, we are using Combat Frenzy, Eternal Rage, Wind Dancer, Herald of Ash, and Ghost Dance. Now, Wind Dancer, we have a lot of different gems here, mainly just to make it a damaging skill so that whenever enemies attack us, we can kill them and retaliate and just explode the screen. We're using Embitter, Close Combat, Pinpoint Critical to crit more, Blind to blind them, and then Magnified Area 2. Now, you might have noticed that we are using Combat Frenzy. Of course, we are constantly, generating and using our Frenzy charges, so that helps out, being able to use Combat Frenzy on that. But this build actually uses all 3 charges because we are constantly breaking armor with Herald of Ice, and Armor Break gives us endurance charges, and we actually have a cast on charm setup because we do use Bijou-Born Belt. So we have Profane Ritual on here with Overabundance, Compressed Duration, Charge Profusion, and Boundless Energy. That is why Charge Regulation is actually really, really strong for this build. And then we are also, using this right here, Valako's Charge. We're not really using it. We really just use these support gems to make sure we have as much int support gems as possible because we are using crystallized immunity. So just put whatever in here to make it so that you can have high int support gems. For Purity of Fire, none of these cost any spirit. At this point, it's been like since 0.1 that we can do that. So I think it might be a feature and not a bug. We'll see. But we are using Cool Headed because we don't use any Ignite charms. We're using Vitality to be able to heal over time. Same with cannibalism, kill, life on kill. We are using clarity for more mana regen because mana is somewhat, it's not really an issue, but I'll explain that a little bit. But we do want a little bit more mana regen. And then we have strong-hearted. If you only have 4 sockets on this, feel free to take out strong-hearted. This was only there because we had the extra socket. Now for Herald of Ash, we managed to get enough spirit, spirit to get this extra skill, which is why we went with an unset ring. If you don't have the spirit that I do, feel free to take out Herald of Ash. It really doesn't help all that much, but everything else in general is pretty required. Now, you might be asking why we use Combat Frenzy when we're using Valako's Roar. Now, if you're using 3 Valako's Roar charms, I would definitely say you don't need Combat Frenzy at all. But because we are only using 2, we are using Combat Frenzy. The reason why we use 2 is because I want to be able to use the Thawing Charm because getting frozen sucks. And running 3 Valako's Roar means that we can't use the Thawing Charm. So we supplement that with Combat Frenzy. Again, if you want to run 3 Valako's Roar, feel free to do so and just take out Combat Frenzy and use something else. But yeah, those are our gems and spirit gems. Now, I want to talk a little about our single target setup before we go into our equipment. So this character, as I mentioned, uses Barrage, Thunderstorm, and Glacial Lance for single target. So how it works is when we are up against a boss, let's say a Pinnacle boss, usually you don't have to Barrage against like map bosses, but Pinnacle bosses, you're going to want to be able to deal a little bit more damage. So on this character, we do run 6 Frenzy Charges. Frenzy Charges here and Frenzy Charge there. Now, what you do is, because we generate Frenzy Charge every time we use mana, before we go into a boss, we are going to be spamming Thunderstorm until we can get 6 Frenzy Charges. Then we use Barrage. Then you press it one more time. Well, this time Barrage let us keep our Frenzy Charges. But if it didn't, in a case where it didn't, right? Let's say we try it again, where we have 6 Frenzy Charges right there, right? Press Barrage again. It didn't let us keep it. You're going to have to press one more Thunderstorm on the boss to get that extra 1 Frenzy Charge, and then you let go of your attack. Well, that one, it kind of timed out on me, but I will show it one more time again so you guys can see. 6 Frenzy Charges, right? Barrage one more time to get Frenzy Charge, and let it go. You want to have that Frenzy Charge there, that last one, because if you don't have that last one, the extra explosion part of your, what is it called, Glacial Lance won't go off. And you can wait a little bit and Glacial Lance will generate its own Frenzy Charge, but just in case, I just want to make sure I always have that Frenzy Charge. So that's why we do that extra little song and dance to get that one last one, just because like, you have like kind of an internal idea about when your thing is going to be off cooldown, but just in case you mess it up, you're going to want to go and do that. And sometimes when you get Perpetual Charge to proc, right, you can do it twice in a row, which is great. So lots of burst damage possible with this build. But yeah, that is going to be the single target setup, which we will show here on this Zesht kill. So when we go into Zesht, right, you can see leading up to Zesht, I am spamming my, what I call Thunderstorm, right? That way we have our 6 charges. And then when Zesht comes out, we press Barrage, of course, right? Press Barrage, consumes all of our Frenzy Charges right about now. Yep. And then we press it again to get our extra Frenzy Charge. And then we let it go. Now, one thing to note, right, about single target. Because we do use Rakiata's Flow and we also use Sacred Flame, you want to make sure that when you're attacking the boss, you're not right next to the boss. Because what Sacred Flame does is that it will make the enemies in our presence resist elemental damage based on their lowest resistance, which is Chaos Resistance. That will make them have 0% resistances, which means our Rakiata's Flow is not doing anything at that point. So when you are going up against single target, you want to make sure that the enemy is not within this green circle, which is your presence area. So let's say that is Zesht right there, right? We are in a good range. But if we go here, our Sacred Flame will be making it so that Zesht has 0 resistances, making it so that our Glacial Lance does way less damage. So please, when you are single targeting enemies, be sure to stand at a distance. That way you are not going to be losing out on damage. But yeah, that is the single target for this character. Pretty easy, pretty simple, pretty effective. Now, for our equipment, we are using a crit spear. So you're going to want a spear with as high crit as possible and as high physical as possible. Now, on top of that, you definitely want this line right here. Gain damage as extra physical. As I explained earlier, this is the backbone of our Herald chaining. So you definitely want this to be on your spear. We are having +3 all attacks, and we also have onslaught on here. The main requirements are this top part. The onslaught is not very important, so if you can't get it on your weapon, that's completely fine. Crit spears are really hard to get, like craft. You have to fracture the crit chance to be able to craft a good one. So I would say that unless you're trying to spend an arm and a leg, just go out and buy one. This one right here was 180 divs, I think. So fairly expensive, but you don't need something this expensive. You can go with something cheaper. Just make sure it has high crit as possible, get you as close to 50% as possible on your Glacial Lance, and that is going to be fine. Again, we are using Sacred Flame. This gives you the most damage out of all the scepters, so that's why we use it. Feel free to use the other ones if you want to, if you can't afford this one or whatnot. But Sacred Flame is going to be the best in slot for this build. Of course, we have 2 sockets on here and double Rabbit Talisman on there. For our weapon, I think this one should actually be a Sockowal's Rune of the Sky. That one should be doing more damage than increased physical here. So I'm going to go and replace that just a little bit. There we go. We've now replaced it. So yeah, we were on our Sacred Flame. That is going to be, you're going to want to have as high gain damage as extra fire as possible. Nothing else matters. And ideally, you do have a 2 socket. If you don't, that's completely fine. Purity Fire can be lower level. It doesn't really matter too much, but I have mine at level 20. Now, again, our main engine of this build is going to be Scold's Bridle with Lightning Coil and Bijou Board. Now, Scold's Bridle, you are going to want as high energy shield as possible, and you are going to want as low mana cost you pay for skills as possible. Get these 2 as low as possible. Nothing else really matters. 2 sockets is nice. I have Bear Idols on both of these. You don't need Bear Idols if you don't want to. This is just to help the Herald chaining feel a little bit better, I guess. You can put whatever you need on here. You can put resistances. You can even put the Rage Gem jewel on here. It doesn't really matter too much. Just put whatever you need on here. I choose to have Bear Idols. For our chest armor, we have, again, we want this to be as high as possible. Physical damage from hits taken as lightning damage as high as possible. Right now, in Path of Exile 2, mitigation is pretty hard to get, especially with like armor or whatever. We're not playing an armor build, but mitigation, converting damage to elemental is some of the best ways to get mitigation in this game, because your LE res will reduce damage a whole lot better than anything else in the game. So that is the reason why our EHP is very high on this build. If you take a look at my path of building, we are at 37,000 EHP. Now, of course, it's a little bit inflated because we are evasion based, but at the same time, we can take a really, really big physical hit because we are using this Ancestral Coil, Male Lightning Coil right here. Get this one as high as possible. We also are using a rune that lets us take 15% of our damage from Mana Before Life. Again, more mitigation. This build has a very, very flimsy defense if you're not running all these pieces. And if you're running all these things, you're actually very tanky. It's actually pretty hard to die. Now, lastly, on this set of equipment that is very important is going to be Bijou Born Belt. We do not use Headhunter on this belt because this is a required piece of equipment. This is what makes our build works, because this decreased charm duration, this reduced charm effect duration, allows us to get our charm charges back faster, giving us the ability to upkeep our frenzy charges. If it were not because of that, we would not be able to upkeep our frenzy charges at almost 100% rate. We would definitely need 3 of these, and that wouldn't even be enough. So get this number right here, reduce charm effect duration, as high as possible. Nothing else matters on here. Of course, if you want higher stat, feel free to, but nothing else matter on it. Not even this one right here, the charm slots, because you do get 2 charm slots as a base on this, and Ritualist also gets another charm slot. So you really don't need anything else other than the charm charges effect duration. Charm charges gain doesn't matter either, which is again because we're a Ritualist, so none of that matters. Just get this reduced charm charge duration as high as possible, and level 20 is definitely a luxury. You don't need this right here, Boundless Energy, but it is a very nice to have. So feel free to get a level 20 if you can afford it. Now, for our boots, as much evasion and movement speed as possible. Deflection is also nice, but not required. I'd say deflection on this build is kind of not that great. We only have a 29% chance to deflect, so you can choose to just ignore this if you really wanted to. We get a lot of mitigation just through the fact that we have Lightning Coil on our build. For our gloves, you're going to want to have physical attacks, cold damage attacks, just flat damage is really important. I would say you can also do lightning. Fire is less desirable. So any combination of that. I have max life to just increase our survivability. Again, our defenses can be potentially a little flimsy. Again, it's not that bad, but anything to help us with our EHP to take more damage. And then we have chaos resistance, lightning resistance, fire, chaos. Just get as many resistances as possible on the suffix. We do have 2 sockets on here, so we did end up going with an iron rune and a a serious rune for more attack speed. For our rings, we have 3 of them. Now, this is really just to round out our survivability and gonna give us a little bit more rarity here and there, and stats. This is a fairly stat-hungry build, so you're gonna wanna get some good stats on your accessories. For these rings, you're going to want flat damage, life if you can, right? And then stats or resistances. Stats, just enough so you can get all of your skills in, and then resistances wherever you can, and then rarity is the last luxury in there. Life is, again, I think pretty important. We do want to be able to increase our life. That way we can take a big hit and not die in one hit. Oh yeah, and for the ring, you definitely need some physical attacks, damage leached as mana, because without this, our character will be using mana like crazy, and we will be running out of mana all the time. So you definitely want this to help us sustain mana. For our amulet, you are going to want to have spirit so that you can run all these spirit gems. And then everything else on the prefix is going to be survivability based. So evasion rating, global defenses. I wouldn't really scale energy shield, so don't get energy shield on here. Just get evasion, global defenses. Suffix, you're going to want +3 projectile skills. Everything else, survivability based. You can even get crit chance, crit damage, whatever you might want to. But the requirement are going to be these top 4 ones. And then we use, again, crystallized immunities so that we are ignoring chill. So that is very nice. Now that is going to be our equipment setup. One thing I did want to talk about is survivability again, because this build is surprisingly tanky. I'm going to show you by going here to Chima that we actually have some pretty cool tech with Ghost Dance. Ghost Dance is really useful in this build because we are using this Scold's Bridle. Scold's Bridle, right? We hit ourselves with physical damage. And what happens when we hit ourselves? Well, Ghost Shrouds, so Ghost Dance, procs. So we basically kind of have like an on-demand heal a lot of times. Of course, you know, it's constantly going off, so it's not as on-demand as we'd like it to be. But let me see if these guys can actually hurt me a little bit more so we can take some damage. You see? Okay, we got some hurt. And then we are going to use, I don't know why I didn't proc there. There you see. We use that, and then it healed us for Ghost Dance. I think we lost our stack right there because we got hit. But you see? Boom. And then we heal back up to full. So it's pretty nice. And it heals us basically back up to full from 0 energy shield. So that is one of the reasons why this build is so tanky. Because on top of using this to mitigate a ton of damage, whenever we do get damage, we basically heal it right back up as we are attacking the enemies. So it's a really, really cool interaction that we get that makes us very, very survivable. Moving on, we are going to be going over our skill tree. We do have a couple of unique gems, nothing super important. First one is going to be a From Nothing Diamond from Dance with Death. This allows us to get Wildcat for a little bit more survivability. We get acceleration for movement speed and skill speed, and then we get these 2 spear nodes. I don't think the spear node is very reliable because projectile damage while there are no enemies within 3 meters is a lot of times pretty hard to achieve. For our other gems, we are using a controlled metamorphosis diamond with a medium to large ring, which allows us to get Chakra of Thought. These 2 for the jugular, True Strike. We also get Dizzying Sweep for more AoE, which allows us to Herald Chain better. We're also using Distracted Target. And then we have Kite Runner for more movement speed. So this is a very efficient metamorphosis gem that I would highly recommend everybody use. Of course, you want to get as low minus elemental resistances as possible on this. We also use a Time Lost Sapphire here for crit chance and crit damage. So get as high as possible on that number, crit chance, crit damage, because it's very efficient to have that here. There's a lot of notables. And then the last one we have is the Heart of the Well. 14 cold, 14 lightning. Just get cold and one other thing. Of course, fire being the worst, lightning being the best. The maximum mana on kill is not required, but I do find it helps out with our sustain. And then lastly, go over our ascendancy. Again, we do want to get Mind Phylacteries. This is like the key linchpin to this build. So I'd say even if you don't have that last ring, if you want to start doing this build, you're going to want to go and head into Mind Phylacteries as soon as you can, because without it, we can't use the charge generation from our charms. That about wraps this video up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys enjoy this build. It is one of the most visually pleasing and very, very fun builds that I have played this league. Probably my favorite league build so far. So let me know if you guys have any questions down below in the comment section. And as per usual, please don't forget to hit the sub button. It is the best way to support the channel. And also, again, the Mobalytics guide too. Check it out. I spend a lot of time writing those guides. And if you want to help out, hit the favorite button. It helps me a ton. I also stream on twitch.tv/MesoXtrue every single day. So come hang out with me there. And hopefully I get to see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace.
Right through you. I need a moment to prepare. Need more time.